What up? It's your boy T-Bird here in the reaction. Today is Wrestling Wednesday. So majority of Wrestling Wednesday is probably a part 1 and 2 of this Wrestling Wednesday, as you know. So the first part of Wrestling Wednesday, we want to take a look at the reason whys of WrestleMania as well too from Plano. First one we're gonna check out is the reason of a betrayal. Why did that bald frog Paul Heyman decided to betray his tribal chief Roman Reigns and his so-called best friend CM Punk at WrestleMania 41 for a now once a snake, always a snake, Seth Rollins, as well as this was maybe before I go further. This was maybe for Raw, so I've also asked his also new Heyman guy Braun Breaker. I'm a little irked about that because I was deeply ready to root for that 10 bastard, but he decided to sell his soul to join to be a Heyman guy. Anyway, without further ado, I just got to see the Wednesday teaser trailer. That's why you see that up. Let's see Plano's behind thoughts on the reason why it went this way. Let's get it. We already know it's gonna go down that way anyway, because when when Seth didn't give him a curse, like he said, now you're in favor. That's part of it, but let's go.
Night 1 of WrestleMania 41 didn't exactly deliver across the board, but when it came to the main event, business quickly picked up. What started off as a great match quickly turned into an unforgettable moment in WWE history. In a stunning twist, Paul Heyman betrayed not just one of his closest friends and allies, but two. First, he stabbed CM Punk in the back. Then, in an even bigger shocking twist, he turned on his tribal chief, Roman Reigns, who he clearly loved. But it didn't end there. Heyman aligned himself with Seth freaking Rollins. The show closed with Rollins and Heyman standing tall, leaving the WWE Universe stunned. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the real reason why Paul Heyman turned his back on Roman Reigns and CM Punk, and why he chose Seth Rollins instead. Paul Heyman turning on CM Punk is actually pretty straightforward, and honestly, I kind of get it. Throughout this entire storyline, it was clear that Punk was using Heyman as a pawn to mess with Roman Reigns. Sure, it gave Punk a psychological edge, but it also put Heyman in an impossible position, caught between his loyalty to his tribal chief and someone who was clearly manipulating him. If I'm Paul Heyman, why would I stand by someone who's using me to sabotage the very foundation of everything that I've built over the last 5 years? That is not loyalty, that's betrayal in disguise. So Heyman made the right call to turn on Punk, and truthfully, Punk had it coming. Heyman's favor was supposed to be getting CM Punk a WrestleMania main event, not being stuck in his corner playing mind games against his tribal chief. There's a line and Punk crossed it. Therefore, Heyman hit him with a low blow and clearly did not care.
That's a crazy way to put it in a way, but I guess. But yeah, this is one gonna be the real issue and why he did what he did with Roman.
That brings us to the bigger question, the harder one to answer. Why would Paul Heyman betray Roman Reigns? At first, it looked like he turned on CM Punk to protect his relationship with the tribal chief, but just minutes later, Heyman stabbed Roman in the back as well. So what happened? Well, it looks like that relationship has been falling apart for a while now. Let's rewind, and over the past year, the bloodline would treat Heyman more like a punching bag than a trusted advisor. When Roman lost his belt and went away for a little bit, while Roman sat at home, the group basically bullied Paul Heyman, and it got so bad that it led to a beatdown. For example, there was that time that Solo Sikoa attacked him because Heyman would not acknowledge him as his tribal chief. And that right there, taking a beating like that is real loyalty. Heyman took that beating rather than betraying Roman Reigns and saying that there's a different tribal chief. That's respect. And yet Roman was not there to help him out. Why would he sit around at home knowing that they had his wise men stressed out and then they would go on to beat him up? That is not a loyal tribal chief. Heyman then brought in CM Punk to help Roman's team at War Games, a move to protect Roman. But instead of showing gratitude, Roman gave Heyman suspicion, distrust, and even put his hands on him during this build-up to WrestleMania.
Lord.
If that's how Roman treats loyalty, maybe he did not deserve it anymore. Or maybe Heyman is just being Paul Heyman. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall.
Pretty much, I'll go with Heyman be Paul Heyman. You can never trust that bars. That's all I'm going to say.
Roman's time at the top might be running out, and if there's one thing we know about Paul Heyman, it's that he always backs a winner. He jumped from Brock Lesnar to Roman Reigns because he saw the future, and now the future might be Seth Rollins, the hottest name in wrestling after that WrestleMania moment. Call Heyman a snake if you want, but damn, he's one smart SOB.
NY27, man, it's an interesting one.
So why would Paul Heyman choose to align with Seth Rollins of all people? Well, I think there's more to this story than meets the eye. This wasn't just about Heyman randomly switching sides. This moment feels like a setup, something that connects directly to Night 2 of WrestleMania. Because I don't think that Paul Heyman simply chose Seth Rollins. I think The Rock chose Seth Rollins.
Probably.
Let's look at all the clues. Over the last few weeks, Rollins has been dropping hints.
And very interesting after he, the way things between him and The Rock went last year. Very interesting.
That could be related to The Rock, whether it's his mannerisms, his swagger, or even his ring gear. The bold, flashy outfits, they're reminiscent of The Rock's iconic style, and it's hard to believe that this is just a coincidence. It was as if Seth was signaling something bigger is coming soon. And then there's Paul Heyman, because during...
Again, this is before we got the newest member, Braun Breaker, but still.
A segment a few months ago, he flashed that same hand gesture that The Rock used at Bad Blood, which could be a subtle but deliberate nod. It wasn't random, it was foreshadowing. For weeks, most of us assumed it would be Cody Rhodes, or maybe even Randy, who would join and be recruited to stand beside John Cena and The Rock. But tonight, that theory got flipped on its head. What we saw was Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman being handpicked, not by accident, not out of desperation, but as part of a calculated plan, a long-term vision. This wasn't about loyalty or betrayal for the sake of it. It was about aligning with power, aligning with the future, and maybe, just maybe, creating a new dominant force in the WWE. Rollins and Heyman weren't just standing tall at the end of Night 1. They were officially initiated into something bigger, something that's going to shake up Night 2 and maybe even shake up the entire landscape of WWE.
Well, about Night 2. So, we'll get to that one in another reason why.
For a long time to come. But now we've got to ask the next big question. Why would Seth Rollins agree to join Paul Heyman and maybe potentially even The Rock and John Cena? Because on the surface, it makes no sense. This goes against everything Seth has stood for over the last few years. He's been the loudest voice pushing back against the part-timers. He's fought the system, rejected the old guard, and championed the future of WWE. He's been the workhorse, the guy who always showed up, who carried the brand when others didn't. So why throw all that away now? The truth is, Seth Rollins is fed up, and honestly, you can't really blame him. Look at his track record. He spent years earning every inch. Meanwhile, guys like Roman Reigns coasted through a historic title reign built on constant interference and cheating, and he barely showed up half the time, and nobody blinked an eye. Seth warned everybody about CM Punk. He called him a cancer to the locker room, and he was mocked for it, and no one listened. Then when Seth lost his world championship, all you heard were crickets. No outrage, no sympathy, no respect. This man gave his everything to WWE, and in return, he got laughed at.
I think that was a reason. I think because they knew it was time. I mean, he was hobbling on injury. They knew it was time. That's the only reason. They was okay with it. Same with Cody Rhodes. We was okay with the laws. Just how it went there, but we're going to get to that reason why later on. But yeah. Other than that, let's keep going.
At, ignored, and overlooked, and at some point that starts to break a person, and maybe just like John Cena, Seth Rollins hit that point, the point where trying to be a good guy just isn't worth it anymore. Because while Rollins was out there putting on classics every week, others climbing to the top with politics and handouts, as for Seth, he was left to fight alone. So when The Rock and John Cena, two of the most powerful forces in WWE history, approached him with a seat at the table with the backing of Paul Heyman, maybe that was one offer that he could not refuse. Not because he wanted to sell out, but because he was tired of being left out. This is clearly a heel turn, but this is also the man who's been pushed too far for far too long. Seth Rollins did not betray us. He just stopped betraying himself. And the last thing in this video is what happens tomorrow. Well, this is how I see it playing out. This video is when I thought that Randy Orton was going to be the one who turns heel. So as you watch this next clip, just think about Seth Rollins and not Randy Orton. And this is how I see it going down.
Alright, you know what? He's gonna be the same thing, so we're gonna move on from that. Oh, so yeah, pretty much that's pretty much majority of it, but again, this was before Raw happened. We got Braun Breaker, possibly a new Dangerous Alliance. I don't know what he will call himself with that as well too, which was interesting. So other than that though, being honest, like I said, in a way he's explaining it, I guess, but at the same time, do we really want to agree with that way? Because, you know, unless you're a Hill fan, you won't agree. But other than that though, do we really want to fully agree with that? Y'all comment down below. Other than that, I'll leave it as just Heyman being Heyman. You can never trust Heyman. Man, how many years, 3 years, we give him a bit of doubt. No matter how time we give him a bit of doubt, he proves he always is state. That's all I'm gonna say. Other than that, if you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bird signing off. One love.